Rapture. We are back with another episode. Today we just wanted to shit. We're gonna shoot the shit. Yeah.
There we go.
Zelda Tears of the Kingdom being 1 year old. And honestly, it's been one of the only major Nintendo games that came out in the last year and a half or so. So might as well touch base back on it again. How we're feeling 1 year on.
Pikmin 4 and Super Mario Wonder have entered the chat.
Mario Wonder is in the same boat. I feel like it's too minor of a release. I feel like right now.
Yeah, that's fair.
It was like hyped up to be like the next big thing, and then it didn't, and it just kind of disappeared. It was like
you do have
game.
a point. Like Tears is absolutely like one of those 3 or 4 monumental releases on a system.
Yeah.
And it definitely was the last juggernaut until Prime 4 comes out.
And you have to remember too, like we kind of missed the ship on some of the major releases. Like we started doing our show after Smash came out, definitely. Odyssey, Breath of the Wild. So Tears was like the only one that we had. So
I think the first biggest game that came out after we started the show was that first holiday was Age of Calamity, which I wouldn't count that. So Metroid Dread. I mean, that's the thing.
Well,
2020 and 2021 had good games, but none of them were like huge.
Yeah, we're talking like heavy hitters. Like
exactly.
Obviously, Mario Wonder was great. I'm not gonna cut it some slack. I'm gonna cut it some slack. It's just like Tears is like the only thing we can be like, okay, like this is monumental. Let's talk.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think between Smash and Tears of the Kingdom, I really think the biggest launch, like just monumental wise, was Splatoon 3.
Yeah. Honestly, I would probably do this. I would have done the same thing if it didn't fall off so damn hard, and the community wasn't in freaking shambles. Because if it wasn't, then we would probably be sat down 6 months ago and talking about it still. But
that being said, I still play Splatoon 3 almost on a daily basis. I love it.
I just need to start finishing games because like Tears of the Kingdom was like, no, Mario Wonder. So I finished Tears, I finished Mario Wonder. That's about it in terms of like recent releases. I guess if you want to count the Pokemon DLC, I've
been really good lately. Like I finished RPG, I finished Thousand Year Door, finished Wonder. I got to the end of Peach. I got through the main section of Mario DK. I think I've been doing pretty good.
Well,
that being said, they're all kind of smaller games.
Yeah, I'm very jealous of you. But also at this time, this is being recorded right before the Direct. And we don't really know what's going on for the rest of the year, so we might as well just touch base on one of the biggest games on the Switch. So
yeah, you know me, I'm never going to pass up an opportunity to talk about Zelda.
Yeah. I mean, if you want, we can touch base 1 year from when the HD games come out.
No, I don't think that's necessary. I will absolutely be doing a review for those, though.
All right. Well, Tears of the Kingdom, though, for real. 1 year on, I've taken a look back. I've been nostalgic already, surprisingly enough. It's made me want to reevaluate Breath of the Wild, and I've been having this itch to actually play and complete Breath of the Wild, so that's good, positive. In terms of like the actual game, I'm starting to realize that the story is more or less the same, and in terms of like it was a little bit better, but like the structure was still mostly the same. Especially because they wanted you to watch it in a certain order, which at least they pointed you in the right direction, but that's not what a lot of people are going to end up doing.
And I mean, I think the problem was, and I don't think I mentioned this like whenever like we were having discussions about it, but even I didn't realize that like in the Forgotten Temple or whatever it was, that there was actually the order.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
I did.
And even if I did, I probably wouldn't have stuck to it. But yeah. I think 1 year on, the story is absolutely the biggest, I'd say, missed opportunity. Like, don't get me wrong, I feel like it's much better than Breath of the Wild, just because there's stuff going on. Ganondorf's back. It feels like there's actual weight, and plus it's adding on to Breath of the Wild. but it is still so fragmented. Like, if you stumble upon the wrong part of the world and you hit a wrong cutscene, you're gonna get so much just spoiled for you.
Yeah. Like, I know some people found out that, like, spoilers if you haven't played it a year on, but um, the whole thing with Zelda, right? Like, they found out that Zelda was the dragon before any of that was even like revealed, and they just completely like it
Yeah.
just became a more linear
Well,
story. So
I know people who came across super early, like basically they left the first like going to Tulin and doing that dungeon, and they found the cutscene where Ganondorf kills Sonya,
yeah, that doesn't make any
and it's
goddamn
like
sense.
I just met you and you're already dead. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Um.
I should reference that I was one of the people that really heavily followed the leaks before the game came out, so I went into my playthrough knowing all the spoilers.
Mm,
So it wasn't. I feel like I have a different perspective because of it.
right.
But that being said, it's still. I feel like I'm lucky because I got to kind of see the story and the way it was meant to be told because that's kind of how it was leaked.
Yeah.
But it still is frustrating.
Yeah. It's interesting because it seems like they were trying and they were trying to strike a balance between the lack of story in Breath of the Wild, and then they're like, okay, well now we have a story, but like it's point A to point B now. So
Yeah.
it's they tried to do something and they like did the exact opposite and it didn't work in a different way. So I'm
So
hoping that they learn their lesson from both of these examples and then they're able to do something new.
what I really want to see with the next open air Zelda, because we know it's coming, these games have done way too well for them to not continue this format, is I want to see them streamline the main story, like point A go to point B go to point C, and then if you want to sprinkle in these memories still, they're like just little goofy things between Zelda and Link, or like Link and a companion, not in the past, just something different, like interaction scenes,
Yeah.
and then you're being you're still being forced in this way that you can still go to dungeons in any order you'd like, but somehow the story is structured so it can kind of swerve and give you a different sort, not different sort of cutscene, but like maybe have different versions of the same cutscene for the order you do it in.
Yeah.
So that way you can still have that freedom, but it's not going to mess up your your viewing experience.
I feel like
I know it's not going to be super easy, but I feel like they can do it.
I feel like it should be like as simple as like, okay, it starts off linear and then it's like, okay, so now you know what the premise of the story is. Here's 4 areas that you can tackle in any order. And they kind of did it with Tears of the Kingdom, right? And then they had
Yeah.
the next step after you. But some people completely skipped that next step and then just went to the secret temple,
But
right?
I also feel
Um,
like that's why the story in Breath of the Wild right now is maybe looked a little bit more kindly, because none of those memories until the one that you unlocked after getting all of the other ones
mhm.
was really spoilery. Like all the other ones were, okay, Zelda's doing this. Okay, they're going to this place for a certain reason. It wasn't, oh, this character dies. Oh, this character's doing this. Oh, Ganondorf is trying to do this. Oh, Zelda's going to turn into a dragon. It wasn't these big revelations. It was just, oh, look at Link and Zelda catching a frog. Oh,
Yeah,
look at Link saving Zelda from a horde of, I'm forgetting, the Yiga clan.
yeah,
Like, it was little stuff that really didn't matter to the story.
yeah, yeah.
But
It's weird because I don't know, but honestly, that's more so the memory side of things, right? But at
yeah,
least Tears of the Kingdom had more story and active involvement in the
yeah,
current day events. Because in Breath of the
yeah,
Wild, it's like, oh, you show up to the thing, the descendants here, and then like you go to the temple and that's it. And Tears of the Kingdom, you're able to be a lot closer with the descendants, right? And I forgot what they're called. Not they're not what are they called?
the champions.
Not the champions. The other one.
Oh, the sages? No,
No,
is
like
it sages?
Sidon and all that. It's like Sidon, like in the first game, it's like, oh
Yeah,
hey, the elephant's being goofy, and then you go up
yeah,
there, and then he's like, here, I'll let you ride, and then that was it, right? And then in
Yeah.
Tears of the Kingdom, like he's with you all the way, and he starts revealing
Yeah.
more things about his relationship and how he's all screwed up, right? And
Exactly.
they were able to do a lot more with it, and he was more actively involved. And I think that is something that we should take away from Tears, let
But
alone the memory system, like the
I think
active.
the present day stuff was great. Besides one thing they did wrong. Every time you completed a dungeon, you met up with that like sage and that gave you the the sacred stone. Every single cutscene was almost identical.
Yeah,
Like you could tell they wanted to like craft their own story, but then they got to that point. It's like, well, we can't. What if they haven't done this one yet? We can't give out certain information. Let's just give out all the information at the same, like every single time, and then by the second or third time you're hitting these dungeons, it just you're so tired of hearing it.
I just don't understand why they didn't have like a checkpoint system where it's like, okay, it's structured in the same way, right? But they're telling something new. Like there's a new bit of
Yeah,
information every time. And I don't
exactly.
understand how they couldn't do that. Like it just seems
Yeah,
like a no-brainer to me, and that was the biggest thing about the story. It was just like you're just like, other than this, witnessing the story out of order, because if you didn't, then it's not that big of a deal. But repeating the same shit over and over again, it's gonna get boring, and people are gonna be like, well, this story is awful because there wasn't any. It was, you just told the same thing over and over again. And I feel like, again, I'm not a coder, but I feel like it would have been you could have easily solved that by having like a checkpoint system. Like, okay, there are 4 different scenes, so in total there's about 16 different versions of the cutscene, right? And like once you hit the first one, you get this piece of information. Once you hit this one, then you get this piece of information. Um, and I feel like that's
I
definitely possible because I've seen that done before.
I really think that Nintendo, while they were absolutely like pushing forward on basically everything else, and they did push forward on the story in some way, but it's also they were too scared to limit, like to have to restrict anything because of how open Breath of the Wild was, that they just didn't do it.
Hmm.
And now we're seeing this. Well, yes, it's a very good story if you view it in the right way. They just did not let you do that.
Yeah.
Like I think it could have been, I don't know, like you can find these relics like in these memories, but you can't view them until you've seen another one.
Right. Yeah.
Like I don't like I that'd be limiting freedom, and I feel like that would raise some like frustration. But I think if it's story purpose, or like everyone else said, play them in order no matter which one you get to.
Yeah.
Like I know the designs correlated with something that happens in the story in that cutscene. Why does it matter?
Yeah.
Like just play them in order. When you see them in this, like when you see them all on the map, you'll understand which one correlates to what cutscene.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Um.
I still like the story.
Yeah. It's a good story. Definitely a lot better than Breath of the Wild. I just feel like a lot of Breath of the Wild's story was. I think my biggest issue with Breath of the Wild story is it's it's all in the past. Like everything that happened was in the past. Link doesn't do
Yep.
jack squat in the present other than do his 4 tasks. Then he kills Ganon, right? And
Yeah.
then this story was a lot more present. Yes, Zelda had her thing, but there was a lot more going on in the moment, and that's what I
Well,
like.
there was also a good bit of world building on the way to each one of these dungeons. Like with Breath of the Wild, you had the Zora one, and that was kind of it. Maybe a little bit with Gerudo, but you go to the Rito village or you go to the Goron village, it's, oh, help us with this really tiny task. Then, oh, go to the Divine Beast, have fun.
Yeah.
Oh, that's done. Go back to hunting for shrines.
Hmm.
At least with Tears of the Kingdom, it was, oh, Tula needs to go up to the sky ship, accompany him. Oh, Riju's having issues, like trying to find the Lightning Temple. Help her out.
Hmm.
Oh,
Freaking zombie
Sidon's dealing with all
apocalypse.
this gloop, dealing with all this gloop in his village. Figure out how to stop it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it wasn't all the way there like I'd want it to be, but there was still an attempt, which I appreciate.
And that kind of leads into my next point, as I want to talk about, as the dungeons. I think they did a lot better with them, but at the end of the day, they were exactly the same, and I don't think anybody wanted that. And I
No.
think even though it's like, okay, yeah, it's an open air dungeon, but like we can have linear dungeons in an open air
Yeah,
game. I don't think people would be
exactly.
too angry about
No.
that. Is that a is that a no? Okay, I thought that was like a bald spot. I don't think people would be too fussed if we had a traditional Zelda dungeon, but I think I do appreciate the variety because in Breath of the Wild, the shrines and the divine beasts were like exactly the same, and you just
Yeah.
got bored of looking at the same ancient shit. And in Breath of the or in Tears of the Kingdom, every temple is the same, every one, and then the shrines are obviously still the same because that's just they're just
Yeah.
shrines, right? But that those are it is better looked upon because I feel like they've done more work, right? Because they're able to
Yeah.
embed these things both lore wise as well as visually into the world, and I think that's pretty cool. So
I mean, I feel the same way. I really didn't care for the Divine Beast. I feel like even today, that's probably the weakest aspect of Breath of the Wild to me. However, we go to Tears of the Kingdom, and yes, it's still not where I want dungeons for Zelda to be. I still think the Fire Temple and the Lightning Temple were fantastic examples for where I'd like to see these dungeons go, just far more expanded.
mhm.
The the Rito one in the sky, it was fun. It had a great boss, but it definitely was. Oh, this is a Breath of the Wild Divine Beast without the Divine Beast controls.
It was
Same
gameplay
thing.
wise very enjoyable, I will
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
Same way with the Zora one. Like, I I I did the Zora one last because I wanted to be different from my Breath of the Wild playthrough. That one was awful. Like, I hated that one. It was just, it
That's
sucked.
I will tell you, everyone has been apparently praising that. What's the I forgot what the last one was, the fifth one.
This the one underground.
Yeah, people were like, "Oh wow, this is like
No,
the best implementation of the Breath of the Wild system." Like, I hated that one. That one was
it was.
by far the worst for me.
It's not a dungeon. Like, it's cool to go up into like the lightning sky you see all game. That part's cool. Going down, building the robot or Minoru, that's great. Walking to the dungeon and having a boss fight, which the boss fight is very cool. That's not a
I
dungeon.
fucking died so many times. That's just
I liked
I
it.
hated that
I
section
liked it.
so much.
But that being said, it's like that wasn't a dungeon. Like that was a lead up to a dungeon, and then the dungeon was just the boss fight.
Yeah, and even then too, the like they try to do like another thing too, by re-going into Hyrule as well, or Hyrule Castle, and doing all that.
Yeah.
Um, and they like tried to like paint that as another dungeon, and it wasn't even as good as the original Hyrule Castle, which
No.
people did
No.
praise. Um,
I to this
and like
day
it
I
was
think
like
Hyrule Castle.
it was. I was
Go
just gonna
ahead.
say like they walk here, fight a couple of dudes, walk here, fight a couple of dudes. Oh, Link, I'm over here actually.
Like Hyrule Castle is what I wanted the dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom to all be like. Just something you go in, you can experience on your own terms. When you want to complete it, great. Like Hyrule Castle was fantastic. Like that's still probably one of my like top 10, top 15 dungeons in the series. Tears of the Kingdom, well yes, it is still very fun to explore Hyrule Castle because there is some changes. It's not a dungeon this time. It's just a landmark.
Yeah. How would you feel? And I just kind of came up with this on the fly, and I'd probably go more in depth with this if we had a Breath of the Wild 3 or next open air Zelda. Because, by the way, in my opinion, I think that we now are living in a time where there will be three Zelda series: open air, 3D, and 2D. I think that's what's going to end up happening. I really hope we do get a classic 3D Zelda. But
Maybe,
my
maybe in the future. I don't
yeah,
expect it right now.
next we're definitely getting Breath of the Wild 3 or whatever it is, right?
It'll be
Um,
a new world. It'll be
yeah, we're right,
different
but you
Link
know
of
what I
Zelda.
mean.
But yes,
Um,
yes, I do.
my question to you is: would it, if the dungeons were still not as good as the older dungeons, right? But
Mhm.
instead of just getting the same thing copy and pasted four times, what if we got more experimental things? Like, okay, one is the Breath of the Wild style dungeon, one is the traditional Zelda type dungeon, one is like a really long roguelike thing that's completely optional, like just kind of where they're
That
more
sounds great.
memorable. They're more memorable because they're trying something different each time. And even if
And no,
it's
that's
linear, it's like, okay, okay, wow, this is a a roguelike type dungeon where it's like you have floors and you die, you go back to the beginning, something
But
like
no,
that.
I see this, and I'm gonna do something you don't expect me to do. I'm gonna make a Pokemon comparison. So I feel like this is kind of their Sun and Moon moment where they can really do a twist on the dungeons, like try something different and see what sticks and what doesn't. I mean, I understand why they did the same format, just evolve with Tears from Breath of the Wild because they're a direct sequel, yada yada yada. But I mean, if you had a dungeon that's like a combat focused one, you have one that's
Well,
like
I
you
mean,
said, it's kind of a roguelike.
the Oracle games are a perfect example of that because one is more
Yeah,
combat focused and one's more puzzle focused. So,
exactly.
I
But I
mean,
mean, you pull something like that, I think it'd be really popular. Let's say you have 6 to 8 just dungeons, and let's say 2 of them are combat, 2 of them are puzzle. One's like a really big roguelike one that you come back throughout the game, kind of like the Temple of the
Temple
Ocean
of
King,
Ocean King. Okay.
kind of like the Tower of Spirits, but good. Like I
Yeah.
don't want to go through it every single time unless like there's a challenge
Yeah.
involved with that. Maybe there's a special reward, but maybe you can also unlock these like little travel medallion kind of things you can place
Yeah.
and then kind of come back to that.
Like different
I would
smaller
love that.
rewards. Yeah.
Like when we went into Breath of the Wild and we saw the Divine Beast, I think everyone kind of understood that dungeons as they used to be are not going to come back unless we get like another traditional 3D Zelda game, which right
Not
now
that
I
they,
don't think that's going to happen.
not that they can't, because it could.
They probably won't.
Yeah. I'm just
But I
saying,
mean,
like, I
even if
feel like if they did that and like every single dungeon is like different in some way instead of,
yeah,
I don't like the Breath of the Wild style dungeon, and then for them to do it 4 times is just,
yeah.
again, it's a lot better in
But
Tears, but
but I mean, I do think this is, and they have explored with like shrines and stuff like that. I'm seeing them trying different things.
Mhm.
But I do think maybe we drop down to like 60 to 80 like little puzzle type shrines, cut the fat, and have like 6 to 8 dungeons that all kind of do their own thing. None of them are kind of like what we know, but there's something different. There's something fun. I would love to see something like that. That'd be really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, and also too, like, I mean, we're thinking about an open air Zelda that's just Breath of the Wild but a different world, right? But
Yeah,
we could even not even be thinking about that they could be completely evolving the formula to be like, I feel like this is like a broken record for Zelda fans. Like, I don't know, like a future Zelda or like a, like a modern Zelda or something along those lines. And then in that way, you can't really do the Breath of the Wild formula again because it's going to be very different, and it might almost be
I
like
do.
GTA like.
I do think the setting of the next Zelda may not be futuristic, but I do think it's gonna be a lot less Sheikah tech focused than the last two were. Because I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I don't know what to expect. I don't know like the style, like the graphical style, obviously. I really don't know if we're gonna be in Hyrule, if they're gonna send us somewhere else. I don't know if like this is the time they give us a female Link. I hate like I know that comes out
Whatever.
every time there's a new Zelda game. But like what if this is like and I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know how I feel about like a character creator in Zelda. I don't know if I want that, but what if it happened?
Yeah,
Like I
I would
gotta be open to that
say
possibility.
save that for like a weird, not spin-off, but like smaller title before
Yeah.
the next big
But I
3D
mean, like,
one.
what if they and Miyamoto absolutely would hate this, so I really don't think this will happen in Miyamoto or Aonuma's like time at Nintendo. What if they turn it into more of a literal legit RPG?
Yeah,
I don't like I said, I don't think I want to see it,
yeah,
but I think down the road, if they need another like revolution for Zelda, that might be where they take it.
yeah. It's weird because we live in a world now where it's like, okay, each 3D Zelda game was almost like iterative before. It's like, okay, we kind of know what to expect roughly. It's just bigger and
Yeah.
better. Now we're at the point where it's like, okay, well, we're kind of thinking like a bigger and better Zelda, but also we really have no idea because Tears of the Kingdom was so similar to Breath of the Wild, right? And in that way, we've never had like a direct sequel like that before. So what does an iterative Zelda look like in this way? And it's kind of fascinating. So,
As much as like, and I think I've already said this once, Tears is still my favorite game of all time. Like, I don't think that's changed. I do think that Tears suffered because COVID happened mid development. I think they wanted to spend nowhere near the amount of time developing it as they did. I really do think they kind of saw it as like a Super Mario Galaxy 2 where They were going to add a bunch of stuff, add a new story. That was kind of it. But I think COVID and then growing expectations for how long it took to come out, I think that forced the dev team to really overextend their hand for how much they wanted to add.
Yeah.
I do think now that we're post Tears of the Kingdom, I'm hoping we don't have to wait another 6 years for the next 3D Zelda. I'm hoping like 5.5.
Yeah.
But we'll see. And I really do think it's going to be one more evolution of Breath of the Wild's formula. I don't think they're going to do anything crazy. I think they're going to try to move into a new world, see a newest scenario. I'm hoping we either get a completely different version of Hyrule or we leave Hyrule because I am so tired of that overworld. And I was like, when the game was announced, I was so hyped to go back to this Hyrule because I'm like, there's so much left to explore. And there was. I never want to see it again.
Yeah,
I love it.
combed every freaking pixel of that place.
I
Up,
think
down,
in like
left, right.
all my Breath of the Wild playthroughs and then my Tears of the Kingdom playthrough, I think I probably spent about 500 hours in that world.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure people would want a new coat of paint as well, or a new world.
They wanted a new one after Breath of the Wild. I saw a lot of people disappointed when Tears was announced back in the day that, oh, was there going to be new? And I still see that as a very valid critique.
All right. Well, now I have like 3 more questions before we kind of like wrap up here. Speaking of the land and the world, do you feel that it had what has returned, so not including Sky and the depths, had changed enough to qualify or like to matter? Like, as a person that has played Breath of the Wild already, is it like, okay, like this is like exactly the same and not that much different, or maybe it was, I don't know.
I think all of the settlements, so like Rito, Kakariko, Lurin, Hateno, all those, they did change for the better. I feel like they changed enough to really feel different. But then you go into this, because, I mean, they all got new scenarios, but then you go into the base, like, grass, mountain, just normal, generic layout Hyrule. I really think if they did not add caves and stuff like that, I really do think the world would have struggled. Because, I mean, it does feel very similar. Yes, you changed there's new Koroks everywhere. There's a couple of different, I think one stable completely changed where it was located. So that was something different. Obviously, the towers were in different places. But outside of that, if you spent a lot of time in this Hyrule, you knew exactly where everything was.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if they didn't add caves, it would have been a lot worse. But since they did, and I feel like they were more expanded than I thought they would have been, I felt very, very engaged in this world yet again.
Right, and I mean, thinking about it from the trailers, we were initially thinking, oh yeah, there's going to be some sort of caving element, and
Yep.
we did not expect that there is an entirely different map underneath as well. And we were thinking, oh yeah, that's just surface level caves, like
they
you
did
know.
the bait and twist. They did the caves in their reveal trailer, which was turned out to be a beta version of the opening of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we saw it again in 2021, we saw the sky, and then I think we all just kind of like, well, there might be a couple caves, but it's probably not going to be what they're going to do. It's going to be the sky. And then it really turned out the bulk of the work really felt like it was in the caves and the depths.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was gonna lead into next. Is like the big selling point I think from a lot of the trailers and stuff was that sky, and oh boy, have I been extremely disappointed by the sky. There are some really cool and creative elements, Mario Galaxy esque type stuff.
100%.
But a lot of repetition goes on up there, and there's just I wanted more Great Sky Islands. Like, I mean, they could
Exactly.
have pulled a page out of Wind Waker, right? But instead of actual islands, there were sky. Like, there could be settlements up there, like like or
I
from generations past, and it just seemed like it was the same thing over and over again, and then a couple of little islands with absolutely nothing on it. So
And that's the thing. It basically is. You get the Great Sky Island, which you're like, oh, I can't wait for them all to be like this.
mm-hmm.
And then you realize every single archipelago is just like a challenge island, a couple of like islands where you can find those I don't remember what they're called. Like there's the treasure maps and there's I don't remember. There was some sort of orbs up there, I swear, unless I'm going crazy.
The
Um
orbs, the
I
spirit orb things.
Yes, thank you.
I don't know what they're called, but
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean though. But it's like and then there's the couple of mazes up there. But outside of that, they're all the same. And then you have a couple of like capsule islands, but there really isn't a lot to do up there. I mean, there is like amount content wise,
yeah,
but once you've seen one, you've basically seen like 80% of what they're going to offer you.
yeah. I would
So
say
it
I would
really was a
definitely,
disappointment.
yeah. By the trailers, I was disappointed, but I feel
Well,
like,
it's all they marketed.
yeah, because
Like
then at the
I
same time, like I don't know if they should have marketed the depths. I feel like that discovery for a lot of people was a lot of fun.
well, the
So
thing is, if unless I'm missing like a couple of moments that I just don't remember in the trailers, I think the only time they showed the depths was in the February direct trailer, and it was just a couple of enemies like mining at the ore like reservoirs.
mhm,
That's all they showed. Everyone thought it was like, oh, that's just a cave system.
yeah,
Like people were like, oh, that looks really deep down, but nobody ever could assume the depths were going to be the entire map again.
but now here's the other thing: the depths are really cool, and discovering that for the first time was great. But I feel like they didn't really like future proof it because
Yeah.
now that you know what it is, it's like it's not really that interesting anymore, and there isn't a whole lot down there either, and it's kind of disappointing because I feel like they could have thrown a couple of dungeons down there. They got those
Yeah, I
coliseums, which are
agree.
pretty cool. They and then the other thing is that they didn't throw any shrines down there or Koroks, which would be that would definitely fill that
Yeah.
out a lot more, and they didn't do
I
that.
They did do one thing that literally made me so excited in the lead up to this game, and I found it out with the leaks. Every single piece of amiibo gear and like
Yeah,
weaponry from Breath of the Wild's amiibo, all underground. I loved the thrill of just going around finding like the sword from Skyward Sword, finding the tunic from Twilight Princess.
yeah.
I thought that was so exciting.
Discovering
But yeah,
everything was cool, but again, on replay throughs, it's like, all right, it's like
I
the
don't know. It
charm is
feels like
lost. I feel like
for
I don't
me,
know.
obviously, like it doesn't matter how detached you are, going down there, you're gonna know what to expect.
Hmm.
But I've been disconnected from the game for about a year now, a little bit less. I don't remember where anything is. So
Fair.
going down there, it's gonna feel new-ish. It's not gonna feel brand new, but
Yeah.
it'll still be fun to hunt down certain items.
I might, when I was playing the game, I was enjoying myself a lot, but I might be looking at it a little too harshly looking back just because I found myself literally for hours climbing against a wall that I didn't know was an endless wall that you couldn't climb over and
Yeah,
just scaling the wall all the way around until I found my way through. Like,
but that's the thing. Once you find out like the tips, like the tricks of like, oh, there's a river there, I can't go past that,
mhm,
or oh, every light route's where one shrine is in either the surface or the sky. Like
yeah.
I feel like once you kind of figure that out, it's
Well, even
pretty cut
then,
and dry what you have to do.
like I took the game pretty piecemeal, right? Where it's like, okay,
Mhm.
for this first stream or couple of streams, I was like, all right, let's. The first was like the tutorial, right, and just getting
Yeah,
out of the Sky Island out of the way, and then I head toward the first dungeon. I do two memories, and then just kind of explore around there, get all the shrines that I can, and then once I discovered the depths, I did the same thing. I picked a couple of shrines that I already had, and then kind of explored it within that area, so that I would get the shrines that I had, and then maybe pick up a couple of because they're easier to see down there because they glow, right? And
yeah.
pick up the ones that I don't have, and then I'm able to find the shrines in the surface, right? And I was kind of able to like piecemeal it in that way, and it probably made the experience a lot smoother. However, at the same time, it kind of listed it, and I
Yeah,
probably um, removed a lot of that exploration factor for myself. But
but I mean, there's no right way to play a game with this amount of content because I feel like if you're the type of player that wants to see as much as possible and you're gonna go region by region, I think there's nothing wrong with that. Because I mean, if it
mhm,
becomes a checklist, that's just kind of the problem. Because I mean, there's so much to do in every corner of the map, whether it be shrines, whether it be a cave, whether it be a Korok or something. Like if you're going at it piece by piece and you're using the depths and the surface to kind of help yourself out, I mean, it feels like that gives the depths more purpose.
Yeah.
But
I was just kind of like blind. Well, I guess everyone was blindly feeling around, but I would like, okay,
yeah,
I know where this is. Why can't I
yeah,
get there? It's like I
yeah.
see it. I mean, I don't see it, but I know, like, I know where it is, and
But
that's just
once
kind of the
it clicks.
experience.
But until that happens, it's so frustrating.
Yeah, I will say at the very least, I didn't look up a tutorial until I was done with the game, and I was like, okay, let me see what I've missed and how many shrines are left, right? And that was more
Right.
so toward the end of the game, but I at least was able to experience it the way it was intended, quote unquote, like
Yeah,
just
I get
kind of
that.
experiencing it and relishing in the world, which is something that I was kind of afraid to do, especially because of my bad experience with Breath of the Wild. I was just left bored, right? And
Yeah.
what I ended up taking away from Tears was like, okay, this world is densely packed, right? And with the depths, with it kind of, you have to take it as a complete package. And
Yeah.
originally I was like, okay, let's, you have the surface, you have the no, they're all together, and it's densely packed in that way. And so when you look at it, just with the Hyrule map, you're like, okay, maybe there isn't a whole lot going on, but when you're going up and down and up and down and up and down, there's just like, it's
Yeah.
your nonstop content. I don't know how you felt when Breath of the Wild came out, but I definitely felt the
I
exact
mean,
opposite.
when Breath of the Wild came out, we all kind of understood collectively that the game was very, like, had a very clear purpose of what it wanted to do, but it was very, very widely critiqued that the world was empty. Like, yes, there's a beauty in this ruined world, but there really wasn't a ton to do unless, like, you were just hunting animals or you're getting wood or doing a side quest. With Tears of the Kingdom, you absolutely have. There's so many more side quests. There's 30 more shrines in this game. There's a lot more civilization, especially with Lookout Landing being added.
Yeah.
The caves, the depths, the sky. It's just everything. Like now there's specific every single stable you go to. There's an actual side quest connected to that.
Yeah.
Like no matter where you go, there is just a bunch to do which Breath of the Wild couldn't have,
And
which I do
Breath
I've heard a lot of. Oh, go ahead.
Breath of the Wild, I mean, they had the few like wandering people here or there, but like Tears of the
Yeah.
Kingdom, it's part of the story where people are like not scared anymore, and they're like, man, this world is so
Yeah.
interesting. Like what you did in Breath of the Wild, they're doing now for themselves,
But in
especially with
the
all the history going on. And so
for
there's
the
just people
players
everywhere.
for the player's perspective though, I'd say there is absolutely a very valid fine line because there's a lot of people that do appreciate the emptiness and how kind of like calm and relaxing exploring Breath of the Wild's world could be. But then there's the more, I'd say, hardcore gamer who loves seeing so much content in every square foot of the map that I really can't blame anyone for liking one game more than the other because I do think they handle this kind of gameplay in very different ways that I think are both great in their own rights.
So,
I know
well,
you didn't love Breath of the Wild, but
I'm
I
not,
understand why you don't.
I'm willing to revisit it. And another question I have too is like, will I be able to enjoy it coming back from Tears? And my
Yeah.
friend seems to say like, oh yeah, it stands on its own. And I'm like, I don't know. Tears of the Kingdom kind of replaces it. It's like it's, yes, it's a different game, but like, how do you go back from all of the quality of life things that Tears of the Kingdom gave, and what should I be expecting when I do return to it?
And I obviously I talked about this before. I played Breath of the Wild literally up until the same day that Tears of the Kingdom came out. So
Hmm.
my playthrough was fresh. But looking back at it now, it's like yes, it is something you can absolutely replay and still get a different experience because Guardians are there. Like the world has this more sense of terror. Like I know Gloom Hands, Tears of the Kingdom, stuff like that, but it's still different shrines, a different story. You have different experiences with these characters. You can kind of see them before they've got stronger, before they've gotten more optimistic. But that being said, it really with the quality of life. Like, you're not going to have caves. You're not going to have these really super cool mechanics that Tears has. You're going to have the ones Breath of the Wild does, which is, I'd say, all of them are a bit more rudimentary.
Hmm.
It's just a completely different experience, and I feel like in some ways it'll feel like you're restricting yourself, which could also be fun.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. I'm like, I'm itching to play it, but like, I'm worried that I'm gonna be like, well, just Tears is just so much better that I can't really return to it. So that's
But like we've talked about before, you've never been the biggest Breath of the Wild fan to begin with, and I really think it's because the game was a little bit too laid back, too calm, not really a ton going on. I
mm,
feel like Tears really struck for you because there was so much content. You never really felt like this world is empty. There's really not much going on.
mm.
So in your case specifically, I think if you try it, you might just find yourself disliking it even more.
Oof. I'm
So
now
I
even more
really,
worried because
but I
I
mean, I don't know if Breath of the Wild, there's anything Breath of the Wild can do that will change your mind. I would love if it could,
mm,
but just hearing all of your positives about Tears of the Kingdom over this last year, like hearing how you really fell in love with it, I don't think Breath of the Wild has anything that is gonna like really pull you back.
here's my problem. I bought the game. And the DLC, so I would like to experience it at some point rather than the first 20 minutes. So,
And I mean, I really recommend that you do push through it, but I do think you're gonna have those thoughts of, why am I doing this? I can't craft things on my arrows. I can't
yeah.
do stuff with my sword. I can't go through the ceiling. I can't build these really cool contraptions. Like, it's really gonna feel more cut and dry. But if you go in with the mentality of, this is gonna be a more laid back experience, it's gonna be a more calmer one. Breath of the Wild on my latest playthrough took me 70 hours to get everything I wanted done. Tears took me 160.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna be a quicker experience, but it's still gonna be a lot more chill.
Yeah. All right. One last thing before we wrap up here. Breath of the Wild obviously redefined the open world, right? And a lot of games have taken inspiration from that. And a lot of people are saying that Tears of the Kingdom, and what people are going to be taking from that is its crafting system, and because they basically completely redefined that. Do you
Yeah.
agree with those sentiments? And also, how do we feel about the crafting system when you're on?
I mean, I think the crafting system's great. I would have loved to see a little bit more, like, not necessarily Animal Crossing New Horizons kind of crafting system where you have these certain things. You can go up to like a certain bench or something like that at a fire. But I do think I really liked where their mind was at with like just connecting stuff to your weapons, your shields, your arrows. That being said, I don't know if it's really gonna define it. Like, I think Breath of the Wild 15, 20 years from now is gonna have that stronger legacy just because it was the first to do it. But I do think Tears of the Kingdom, we're at a point right now where I don't want to say a lot of people are hating on it, but there are a few hating on it just because, oh, it's too bloated. It does this wrong compared to Breath of the Wild. I do think it's just because it's a sequel, and there's not much a sequel can really do to, I don't want to say outlive its predecessor's legacy, just because they both are very similar quality.
Hmm.
I just think Tears is always going to be the younger brother that's arguably much better, but because it's not doing anything monumentally different, it's just a better Breath of the Wild. But Breath of the Wild can still hang on its own for some people. I unfortunately don't think Tears is going to have this long lasting, fantastic legacy that I'd say Ocarina, A Link to the Past, maybe Wind Waker, Twilight Princess can say for themselves.
Right. Um. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I really wish that discourse kept going on about this game. I mean, we got it far longer than we've had any of the games this year. But like, because people are just building a bunch of shit, and it was
Yeah,
like 6 months later, we're like, what the fuck?
yeah.
But just the fact that it just got absolutely massacred at the Game Awards, and then just people just not. I just feel like people were trying to take something away from this, and again, it was ultimately the crafting system. But at the end of the day, I don't think any other game can really replicate that in the same way, or in their own way even, because it's so unique and special to that game, and that's what
Yeah.
Nintendo's really good at. But it's not. I agree with you. It might not have as far-reaching legacy as it did,
This
especially just with how the circumstances ended up playing out. Not because of just the game itself, because
this
there could be a timeline out there where Tears of the Kingdom does have just as big of a legacy as Breath of the Wild, but
this isn't the perfect comparison, but it's one that I think really makes sense to me. I kind of see Breath and Tears as this generation's Ocarina and Majora. Like Ocarina was this monumental shift in gaming. It did so much right. And then you go into Majora, which, like I said, this is where the similarities kind of falter because Majora does a very different thing. It's a much smaller and it's much smaller in content,
mhm.
but it still is a expansion on what Ocarina did. Some will say it's better, some will say it's not as good. And it's just gonna be that younger brother, like I said, that just is well loved in certain parts of the community, but others might be like, well, it was a great game. Breath of the Wild did it better.
Right. Anything more specifically about the crafting system in terms of like flaws or?
Not that I can think of. I think Ascend was a really cool mechanic. Being able to combine stuff was great. I mean, Rewind was just kind of there.
I
It was
think
great. I liked,
the
but
the charm of finding certain things. I probably feel the same thing about the depths, and like losing that charm of just like finding out what things work. And it's like, okay, at first it was like, man, what, how many different things work. At the end of the day, it's like not that much stuff does anything. It's creative, but like at the end of
yeah.
the day, there's probably, you can count on your fingers how many
For
different items
me,
have different properties.
I would say that the Tears of the Kingdom tool set is a lot more exciting, but I think the one Breath of the Wild had would get you a lot further.
It was like the same. They had at the base value.
Not
Oh,
necessarily
we're talking
like
about
yeah, like
the
the
runes.
ruins versus
Okay.
the yeah.
I
So I
thought
mean,
you were
like you
saying
had your
like the toolkit as in like the item. So I was like,
no, no. Like I mean, like you had stasis, which could freeze. You had cryonis, which could freeze, and then you had bombs and stuff like
which could
that.
freeze.
I feel like, but I mean, those. I feel like they made those so well for Breath of the Wild that you really could go so far with those. With Tears of the Kingdom, the ones you have, they're a lot more useful, I'd say, in the moment. But they have you can play the game without them
Yeah.
if you really need to in most cases.
I feel like when I do play Breath of the Wild, I'm gonna be like, why can't I move anything? That's gonna be the
Yeah.
biggest thing I'm probably gonna take away is like having magnesis be limited to only magnetic things might be a little bit of a struggle for me. But other
Where's
than
my
that,
where's my jetpack? Where's my little hoverboard thing that it's in Spider-Man 2?
what?
Wait, is the Green Goblin thing?
Oh,
That's
the
isn't it? Yeah.
hobgoblin thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, true, but I only use that a handful of times, and I think the biggest thing, another thing, sorry, I say that a lot on this show, um, but the ascendability too, I struggled like figuring out the stamina system in Breath of the Wild, using that, I more times than not, I would find myself, okay, is there a cave nearby, and then just shoot up to the top, and it's like,
Yep.
now I'm gonna have to actually climb, but to be fair, at the same time, I did abuse the stamina system a whole lot in Tears as well, where I was just
Yeah.
climbing, eating, and like just kind of, especially in the depths as well. So maybe I'll adjust to it pretty simply, but it's gonna be interesting.
There's one more thing I want to touch on before we end the video. Breath of the Wild, the Great Plateau, one of the greatest tutorials in gaming. The Great Sky Islands, not so much. Like it still had a similar feel, but I felt like I was being guided along on the Great Sky Island, whereas on the Great Plateau you could kind of do whatever you wanted. And
Interesting.
it felt more of like a forced tutorial than Breath of the Wild did, which I did not like as much, unfortunately.
I think a lot of people, and especially speedrunner, don't like what either game did because it limited you to
Yeah,
just
they're
that
they're trapped
area.
there.
I also think too that yes, I think Breath of the Wild had a different approach, right? Where even though I would say largely they're on the same level. I think that for me, seeing that title card was just as impactful as seeing the title card for Breath of the Wild.
Oh, I would
And
100% agree with that, but I think what happens
and
after
well,
is a little.
what I mean by that is that, or I think that they're on the same level, and that's because they wanted to establish as Tears being a more different experience, and
Yeah.
in that same way, Breath of the Wild was like, okay, this is like a baby version of what you'll end up doing later, right? You being able to
Right.
go and do whatever you want. And Tears of the Kingdom was like, okay, we have more mechanics and things that we have to teach you that are a lot more complicated. So we might have to hold your hand a little bit. But after that, you're free to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And
But
unfortunately, they do hold your hand for maybe a little too long and pretty much not until
yeah.
you get the glider. And people are like, where the fuck is my glider? So
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I appreciated what Tears did, but it really was okay. Here's point A. Go to this shrine. Okay, sweet. You did that shrine. Use your new mechanics to go to that shrine,
yeah.
and you end up just doing a circle. Yes, you can kind of decide which way you go around said circle, but there's very obviously a set way they want you to go.
Yeah, and it's definitely more of a playground with the new mechanics. Rather, Breath of the Wild was just a mini Breath of the Wild, because like you
Yeah,
can't. It
exactly.
wasn't really a. You didn't really mess. I mean, you did, but like it wasn't like okay. Very clearly, they want you to play with this mechanic, right? And I don't know. It's interesting because I would rather a mini Breath of the Wild, but I also appreciated Tears a lot more personally.
Yeah,
But
I get
and
that.
I this kind of leads into my hatred for Breath of the Wild. I really didn't know what I was supposed to do at all, and the direction was not clear. And it's like in Tears of the Kingdom, it was like, okay, like I know what I'm doing. And in Breath of the Wild,
Yeah.
it was like am I just supposed to eat peppers and just run through it? And it bothered me so much because I was like, there's a way it wants me to do it, and I know that.
Yeah.
And then like they wanted you to visit the cabin and then find the recipe, and like I didn't understand that, and so I was just kind of blindly running through it. And a lot of people are like, well, that's Breath of the Wild for you. And it's like, well, yeah, I would love to just be able to play it, but it's very clearly screaming in my face the solution, and I didn't get it. And that's what bothered me. Instead of
Yeah.
just like being able to have fun and doing it my own way, I was just like, it's telling me what to do. I feel like I'm doing it wrong.
It wanted you to get creative. It wanted you to use the peppers. You didn't have to find the recipe, but if you did, great. That's just a helping hand. But I think it kind of wanted you to go like hunt an animal, have their meat, and then oh look, we're going into this cold section. Here's these peppers, and
Yeah.
here's a cooking pan right next to you.
Yeah.
Cook.
And
But I understand that.
That's why I'm feeling there's some parts of me where it's like Breath of the Wild feels a little more primitive, and then some ways I'm like, okay, now that I've experienced this, then I'm gonna be more appreciative of what the open world nature of it, and to be able to break past those mental boundaries that clouded my judgment before. And that's where
I
I'm
get
hoping,
that.
and that's where I'm hoping that the positive will outshine the negative. And instead of being okay, well, like yes, I'm struggling because I can't move everything, right? Now I'm just like, okay, I'm being more creative and I'm able to do more things because they did hold my hand before, and now I'm able to freely express myself,
Right.
as I did later on in Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah. I think that's everything.
Yeah. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, we ended up talking for an hour anyway.
Sounds
So
like me.
I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's kind of like a weird last minute thing that I wanted to do because I really did enjoy Tears of the Kingdom, and this is like my first true complete Zelda experience. Yes, I played Link's Awakening, but and I beat it, but this game was truly something special for me, and obviously it's your favorite game of all time now. So I think it's pretty good that we revisited it year on and
Yeah.
just sort of critique it in ways and fantasize about the future and reminisce about the past. And I think now that we've done this, I think we're fully ready for what comes next. So, and I'm excited.
I mean,
for it.
we're coming up on like the first genuine hardware jump that Nintendo's had since I'd say the Wii.
Yeah.
That I'm excited to see where they take Zelda next.
Yeah. So yeah, if you are just as appreciative as we are for this game, leave a like if you made it this far in the video, and comment down below what your favorite Zelda game is and your favorite moments from Tears of the Kingdom. And also smash subscribe and join our Discord and our Patreon if you want to support us even further. But with that, I think that pretty much concludes today's episode, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.